Does anyone need one of those sheets? Like they misplaced it or need another one? Okay, so exigence is a word that's associated with rhetoric. Remember, rhetoric is any means of communication to persuade. And exigence is something that all pieces of rhetoric have to have. And it is, here's the definition. It's the event or occurrence that prompts rhetorical discourse. So basically, what was the thing that caused you to want to be persuasive? What kind of problem are you addressing? What did someone say to you that you now need to like defend yourself against? What is the occasion for which you are dressing up for? Like whatever that like thing is that prompts you to be persuasive, that's the exigence. So I have a couple quotes about what exigence is. It says exigence has to do with what prompts the writer to write in the first place. And it usually entails some kind of sense of urgency. Like it's like the problem needs attention right now. And so it's like something in the culture is off, you think, or something is needs to be addressed. And so that's the exigence. And then you are going to address it. That's the rhetoric. Make sense so far? Okay, cool. So what I've been noticing lately that has been quite a point of exigence. We're going to take pictures at 1:45 in case you were wondering. We're just going down the shifts. So. All right, one thing I've been noticing that people have been talking about lately is Afghanistan. Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan is a huge point of exigence. It's prompting a lot of people to write essays about it or deliver speeches about it or just post their Instagram picture about it. Like tons of people are sort of weighing in on this event. So that is a moment of exigence. So we're just going to watch about 2 minutes of how someone responds to that exigence. So we're just going to watch about 2 minutes of the Biden press conference on it. All right, no worries if you don't know much about it or about what's going on. This is just serving our purposes for exigence. So here we go.
It's taken place in the last week, and the steps we're taking to address the rapidly evolving events. My national security team and I have been closely monitoring the situation on the ground in Afghanistan and moving quickly to execute the plans we had put in place to respond to every constituency, including and contingency, including the rapid collapse we're seeing now. I'll speak more in a moment about the specific steps we're taking, but I want to remind everyone how we got here and what America's interests are in Afghanistan. We went to Afghanistan almost 20 years ago with clear goals. Get those who attacked us on September 11, 2001, and make sure al-Qaeda could not use Afghanistan as a base from which to attack us again. We did that. We severely degraded al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We never gave up the hunt for Osama bin Laden, and we got him. That was a decade ago. Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. It was never supposed to be creating a unified, centralized democracy. Our only vital national interest in Afghanistan remains today what it has always been: preventing a terrorist attack on America's homeland.
Okay, that's where we'll stop it. Wasn't even quite 2 minutes. So we heard the exposition a little bit there. He's like, okay, let me give you a little exposition on, what the situation has been like in Afghanistan, what the history is, right? What is the exigence? Why do you think that he felt like this was the moment in time? And I might have already said this, but to deliver this press conference about Afghanistan? Why not 3 weeks ago talk about Afghanistan?
Maybe now, because there's a lot of like national, like everyone is like watching right now because of the Taliban taking it over. So it's like now it's like present and prominent in society than
Yeah.
it was a few years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Addie.
It kind of feels like it's like our fault almost too, and so it's getting a lot of news basically
Yes.
regarding that.
Yes, and even more specific. Oh, Kelly, yeah.
You might have been getting like backlash or a lot of pressure.
Yeah, yeah. So even more specifically, his fault, right? So he had approved, he went ahead with the plan to remove US troops from Afghanistan. He didn't anticipate how quickly Afghanistan would fall, but they did anticipate that it would fall to the Taliban. But he didn't address this issue when he approved the plan to remove US forces. He addressed the issue after the Taliban moved in. If that it makes sense. So the exigence wasn't necessarily the decision to remove forces. The exigence, the moment that he decided this is when I need to address the nation, is when things went really wrong. So to me, that feels a lot like he's like, ooh, I gotta defend myself right now, right? Like I need to stand up here and defend my administration. What were some of the ways that he was addressing this moment in particular that you felt like was a little bit, it had a, I mean, everything we all say is biased, but it definitely had some bias to it. Yeah, Nat?
I felt like instead of like kind of judging, oh, we lost that, may change it. Well, let's just like, he like kind of pivoted away. It's like, well, what did we want to? Instead of being like, everyone's like, how did we lose so quickly that? It's like, well, but we did kill Osama bin Laden 10 years ago. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not what we asked, really. We kind of
Right.
wondered why we pulled troops, not why we were there in the first place. We knew what happened.
Absolutely. Shifting the conversation away from what is like the attack to something that he can see himself, he can say is positive. Yeah, Addie?
Me and my mom were talking about all of it the other day, and it reminded me of the one essay we had to write last year on like if like as the US, if we should like be more involved in like everything else that goes on
Yeah.
beyond
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so I feel like we're basically just so focused on like what's happening to us and what's going to happen to us rather than what is really happening there and why it happened.
Yeah.
But he's like,
Yeah, notice that the way that he approaches the exigence, at least at the beginning of the press conference, which really is the part that people watch. After a few minutes, people tend to turn the channel if we're being honest, right? So right at the beginning, he is not saying, hey, things are looking really bad there right now. You know, the airports are overrun. People are like, I mean, it's really dark. We don't need to get into how dark it is right now, but like it's really dark. And he could have talked about like, you know, we are with our allies in Afghanistan and, you know, in spirit and trying to like talk about that part of it, right? But he doesn't do that. The way that he chooses to address the exigence right up the bat is, hey, back to Nat's comment, like, this is what we did right. This is actually a win for us. So he like finds a way to spin it, you know? Yeah.
I was just gonna say it's like kind of what Addie said, it's biased towards us. Like he talked about how our only goal was keeping like the terrorists out of US soil, but he didn't like, and he was like, our goal was never to help with international development, which like I feel like kind of sometimes it is, but
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he just focused on like how it's affecting people in the US and try to not look outside of our country.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Josie.
You can basically say the whole thing is kind of biased, because, right? The whole reason behind him kind of standing up and saying it is because of the backlash they're getting.
Yes.
So his intention isn't really to be like updating people on it and being like, oh, this is why we were doing this. He could also be like, I don't know, right? His intention behind it isn't to inform people. It's kind of more to address the backlash and kind of save himself.
Exactly. it does. And that's where I wanted to clarify and make sure that we understood that. When we're talking about exigence, we're talking about the problem that we call him a rhetor here, the rhetorician, the person who is speaking, the problem that he sees that needs to be addressed. So we might be seeing this and we're like, hey, could you address the fact that things are very bad in Afghanistan? And he's not necessarily addressing that. What he is addressing here is, I'm addressing the fact that you're criticizing me for what is happening in Afghanistan. So the exigence is the criticism, the backlash. The exigence isn't Taliban taking over Afghanistan. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So under example, you can just write, Biden press conference about Afghanistan, something like that, just so you remember. And then under effects, I want you to write down some of the stuff we've been talking about. What was the effects of the way that he addressed that exigence? How did it affect the audience? Or you could think about like, what was his purpose in talking about it the way that he did? I know I don't leave you very much room for effect, but do try and get some detail in there. All right, you can put that away. It just goes in your binder. If you've got a tab on your binder, you could label it rhetorical vocabulary. And then you need some paper to take notes. So hopefully your binders have some paper in them. If you do not, you can raise your hand and I've got some extra paper today. Or even if you had a shirtless, I think she does this too. This will be some review for you. But I want you to take notes on this acronym I'm going to show you. So it is Soapstones, yeah. So in order to figure out like the exigence, you really need to have background knowledge. So if you were like watching that press conference and like hearing about this for the first time, it would have been really hard to talk about how he's being persuasive because you're just like, I don't know about Afghanistan right now. So Soapstones is an acronym we're going to use to help us figure out the context. And by knowing the context, we're going to be able to say more interesting things about the persuasive techniques. So the acronym looks like this. Soapstones. Label it this way. Subject, occasion, audience, purpose, speaker, tone, and style. There we go. So if you know all of the bits of Soapstone about a certain piece of rhetoric, you're going to be able to know about the context of it. It's going to give you enough details about the context to be able to talk about it really intelligently. So let's just talk about what each part is. The subject is just like a one-word answer. It's just like, what is a subject that this is about? So for a novel, that's pretty difficult. I feel like Scarlet Letter, because it's a good novel, has quite a lot of subjects that it is about, but let's just say I want to focus on one bit. A subject might be sin, and that's the subject of it. So it's really like broad, and you're just trying to like get an idea for like what it is talking about. All right, the occasion is the where, the when, and the what. So it's like, where did this piece of rhetoric take place? Actually, let's stick with Biden. I'm gonna erase this and say, the subject. Afghanistan. Okay, cool. The where, the when, the what. The where, United States, White House, I don't know the name of that room, press conference room, who knows? That's just, you know, the location of the thing. The when, we need to know all of the relevant details sort of surrounding the event. This is where it kind of gets a little bit more interesting. We're thinking here about the history of the war and learning a little bit about that. We're thinking about the present moment and why he wants to talk about it right now. We're kind of thinking about like international reactions right now and like all different sorts of things that define the moment. And then the what is the genre. So that is, for this one, press conference. It could be a speech or an essay or a novel, anything like that. But for this one, it was a press conference. Well, I guess it's a speech first, and then he'll take questions and answers. All right, the audience is who it is intended for. To whom? Who is it intended for? It's intended for him. Whom is it intended for? When you're thinking, sorry, everything's getting messy up here. When you're thinking about audience, you're thinking about demographics. Okay, so tell me who you think Biden's press conference, even just the 1.5 minutes you saw, who was that intended for? Yeah, Matthew?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's for like Americans.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think he was intending that to be towards Afghanis, or he is like really cold-hearted. I think he is intending that for Americans. Now tell me a little bit about Americans. Which kind of Americans, which group of Americans do you think he's maybe more focused towards? Bjorn?
Maybe the ones that are criticizing him more.
Okay, so maybe some critics. Okay, what do we know about the critics of Biden when it comes to Afghanistan policy? Any ideas? That one kind of gets into the weeds of reading the news, I think. Anyone know who's like the most mad at Biden for pulling out of Afghanistan? Do you think it's Republicans or Democrats? Republicans or Democrats, and you're saying Republicans, tell me why. Sorry, I just was saying who, I couldn't hear it. Yeah.
I said Republicans because I think that one, they just don't like Biden in the first
Okay.
place.
Okay.
And two, Trump was slowly pulling the troops away. And so, and then Biden voted for them to just like go all at once, basically. I think. And sorry, I was like trying to. I'm not sure
You're
if I
good,
got
yeah.
it right.
He approved the process.
Yeah.
It was already set in motion.
Yeah, and so then they're kind of blaming him for doing it all at once instead of following what the Republican Party president wanted.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I just have a question, and it's like not, it's just like about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What was like the goal of taking the troops out? Like, what was? Like,
I
the
think it
benefit?
was, so what I had heard, and I'm not an expert by any means, but from what I understand, for the last 20 years, America has been funding the Afghan army by providing weapons and training. But there was such an undercurrent of corruption in the Afghan government, which had been democratically elected. America set up a democratic government, but there was so much corruption, and there was so much like changing of hands with the Taliban. So like America would be paying for weapons, and the corrupt government official would take those, and instead of giving them to the Afghan government, they'd give them to the Taliban, like the terrorist organization. So we just were not getting anywhere. It was just had stayed the same pretty much for 18 years. And so it was sort of, there had been a lot of political pressure to remove people from, like to remove troops from Afghanistan just because of all the money, mostly money, because we hadn't lost a lot of lives, but a lot of funds, because it didn't feel like it was going anywhere. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. And let me ask this though. Which political party, just stereotypically, which political party seems to want to give more money to humanitarian efforts worldwide? Yeah. Yeah, so in this case, it is actually like the more liberal people who seem to be criticizing Biden the most. Because Republicans were sort of on board with Trump removing troops. And it was like really liberal Democrats now who are seeing that the Taliban is going to go in and like deny women education, and they're going to like, just take down all democracy. And they're like, we can keep giving money, we can keep giving support. Does that make sense? Like, okay, so I think like they are also primed not to like him. That's why I put this up here. Biden is like a very moderate president. And so extremes on both sides are just sick of him. They don't like him. So I have primed not to like him, his critics, and supportive of humanitarian efforts internationally. So like, they kind of want America to be involved in conflicts if it's going to help people in these other countries. Okay. So when we're thinking then about the audience, we can think about all sorts of demographics. We want to think about political persuasion. We want to think about gender and race and socioeconomic status and like, the area of the country they live in, like whatever details we can provide is really going to help us see how he's making choices to reach that specific audience. All right, purpose is his argument, how he is addressing the exigence. Which we talked about. Speaker is the speaker. And I just gave you something about him. So Biden, kind of moderate Democrat. What else do you know about Biden? Old man. All right. What else do we know about him? Yeah.
Former vice president.
Yeah, cool. Former vice president. So he had already decided, at least, he was part of a team that decided to keep troops there at least once while he was in power. Yeah. Anything else we know about him? Do you know anything about like his family background? I don't know that it will be relevant, but it might be. Lucy? Yeah, he had one son who died from brain cancer. He had how many kids that died in the car accident? I want to say 2. So when his family was young, his wife, and I want to say 2 kids, and now I'm feeling very ignorant for not knowing that, but I want to say that died in a car accident. So Jill Biden is his second wife, and then one son died of a brain tumor. So he has lots of tragedy in his past, which a lot of people will talk about being relevant to the choices that he makes as president.
Yeah. And I think also that one that died of brain cancer had a military background.
Yes, he did. Kids with military background. Okay, excellent. All right, the tone. Tone is attitude towards subject. So depending on what you say the subject is how you will read the tone. What is Biden's attitude towards Afghanistan, and or if we're thinking about it more, what Joseph was saying, what is Biden's attitude towards the backlash he's getting? Yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. He feels defensive about it. I think that definitely comes across in that first minute and a half. Anything else, any other words you think apply here? Attitudes that he had towards what's going on in Afghanistan right now?
I'm not trying to say this, but he sounds like he was justifying.
Yeah. So feels I'm gonna make a leap, but I'm gonna say feels a little guilty. Usually when we feel like we need to justify things, it's usually because we feel a little bit of guilt inside, and whether that's guilt like, oh, I might have done the wrong thing, or whether it's guilt like I feel like I'm letting people down. Either way, he feels the need to justify it. All right, cool. Let's stick with that. And then style, we are going to spend, I don't know, the next semester talking about. So we're going to skip style for now, but style just means the way they structure their argument. And that is Soapstones. If you go through each of those things and find out a little bit about all of these things, then you will be so set for writing a rhetorical analysis. You will be so set for writing all about how someone is being persuasive. So we're gonna practice that with Scarlet Letter. If you have your Chromebook, go ahead and pull that out. Or you can use your phone if you get good connection in here. However you wanna do it. Now. This is a good idea. Okay. All right, looks good. Does it still take forever to get those booted? Oh, bummer. So I'm gonna have you researching and brainstorming about the Scarlet Letter, the soapstones for the Scarlet Letter. So I'm gonna give you a time for each bit of it. And working with a partner, you guys are going to try to get as much information as you can about each of these things for the Scarlet Letter. So I'll prompt you, I'll say, okay, you've got 1 minute to write down all the subjects. I'll say you've got 5 minutes to research the occasion. So you'll go step by step. All right, so let's have like these 2 rows work together, these 2 rows, and these 2 rows, and then 2 and 2. If your person is not sitting next to you, then work in a group of 3 with somebody. All right, cool. So I'm gonna give you first, like I said, just 1 minute to write down and discuss as many subjects as you can for the Scarlet Letter. And you'll write these in your notes. Oh, yeah, go grab it. Subjects. So these are the 1-word things that Scarlet Letter could be about. Gender, religion, punishment, guilt, I guess.
Yeah. Because they show that like other kind of
Yeah, that and like environment and that's like
Secrecy.
Probably.
I put secrecy.
Okay. I'll just steal it out.
Okay, long enough. So you've got some words written down for the subject, right? I'm now going to give you, let's do 4 minutes to research the occasion. So this is the where, when, and what of the Scarlet Letter. So you're trying to figure out what was going on around the time that he was writing this and around the place that he was writing it. All right, go ahead.
Puritan society. Yeah. So which
I know his
because that's like when the actions. I put Puritan society because that has a lot to do with like punishment.
It was, yeah, the reason I did was Massachusetts.
It's in, yes, he's the great grandson of the Salem witch trial.
New England, yeah.
That's not really it.
Cause that's where.
Which like, Americans.
I would say like.
And this is where your computers and the internet can come in handy.
It was published in, which is
So late 19.
well, where last in the 20th century, well, like the last 20th century. Yeah, it's like
Oh, I know it's around like 10 It's got a letter set in Boston in the 1600s prior to the 1980s. Boston was part of Massachusetts Bay Colony, so we had to establish our own. Oh, wow.
So not New England.
Well, I mean, I think it was called that.
Yeah.
It was basically just like accelerated. So wait, they were still on the British.
Yeah, because we didn't gain our independence until 1976.
So like, yeah.
Under British rule.
British.
I have a whole.
There were like new laws. They like police officers, they didn't have like someone trying to find.
I know.
So that's why.
Okay, remember you're thinking about the time period when it was published, not when it was
So
set,
those
so
are people right
eighteen
now, I
fifty.
think unjustly like. I'd say like. So like when.
Oh, we were independent.
There must have been something like more
This is right before the Civil War. I actually can't remember.
We'll just say beginning of US as a country.
Okay, so that was still alive. Yeah.
We could just put pre-Civil War. Pre-Civil War.
Okay, when was it written exactly?
I'm going home by
What
one.
is-
And then again, it was focused on emotions. And steering from the alliance, like,
Was.
Yeah, I guess just like some
Letter. 1850.
All right. As much as you could get down, there's plenty more to say. We'll come back to that. Okay, audience is where you're kind of like gonna take what you figured out about the occasion in 1850, and you're gonna make some assumptions about who his audience would have been for this particular novel. You could also do some Googling for this one too. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes for this one. Okay, go ahead.
I think maybe like, well, cause it, I don't know, it's like, depends on the theme of it, but like, I feel like people in power are politicians because a lot of the issues and the themes are very political. Maybe to like share a point of like gender inequality or, you know, yeah.
I think it was targeting kind of that analyze versus who didn't like, not saying understand how judgmental have points there society.
What else do we think? Like figures,
I'd say
people in
yeah,
power.
the story like kind of
Yeah. And actually at the same time, kind of maybe, but Cause it like, I feel like not as much, cause it kind of portrays it in not as a positive light. Because he like pretends that he's like this perfect.
I just can't
but
believe
in
you.
reality, he's committed a, you know.
I also think.
But I-
What is he? I think he was trying to like show.
But it also could like be like a message. of,
Well,
like,
yeah, that,
no
but
one's
it's also
perfect,
like,
you know, even like.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of what he's trying.
I know, I just wish I knew.
So the audience, I guess, is kind of
Thought it
more people.
was fair or unfair, you know what I mean?
Is that what he called?
Yeah.
Mystery, drama.
No, that was.
I don't think it'd be, like, it's kind of like young adults to like.
Yeah, I guess people.
Oh,
It's not like quite.
we like
it's
the
young
wrong
people
thing
actually,
then.
but young adults, like,
I was like
There
thinking.
could be multiple.
Yeah.
not old
Yeah.
people, not.
Honestly, if I was a writer, I'd pretty much just be everyone.
Yeah.
Like anyone who's gonna read it, like, hey, great.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe what he's like trying to do. It's kind of like this guy is like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, you know, it's like, Game of Thrones, but it's not really, like, it's kind of like
I'm
a
gonna
dissection exercise.
It's just.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what he's doing. So then they start doing this, like, this year, they're like, oh, damn. You know, like that, and you're like, he points out, like,
If you make it like this, guys.
Yeah. I want to also say like opinion, like people.
Okay, you're good. All right, so for purpose, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. And I want you to think about what the exigence was. And what, that's an and. Hawthorne was trying to achieve with this book. I'll say this book made him rich. So that's part of what he was trying to achieve, was just money, a living, you know? But what I mean is like, why choose to write this book at this point in time? It's 1850 and yet he's writing about, 200 years earlier. Like, why does he, is it 200 years? But why does he care so much about what the Puritans were like back then? What type of like problem is he trying to address in 1850? So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to kind of brainstorm about that.
I try to like
Wait, did the book like, you know how a lot of like classic literature doesn't get as big till many years down the road?
This one was immediately
Really?
successful. Yeah,
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
yeah.
Purpose. I think at the same time, he was also.
It's not the same thing.
I think he's trying to make a difference.
Still.
If he was
why did he write
I don't know.
I think that like.
money?
What?
Or just trying to figure out why this was.
Oh, why you read it? Money. That's why it's such a fast-paced, like thriller.
Pretty much nothing makes sense. You know, sometimes I hope these authors were like, honestly, this book has no purpose. I just need the money. And then like we'll be a class of like, this is so much purpose and it means so much.
I think he did it to torture students. I think he knew.
Yeah.
He did. He was like, a couple hundred years later, they're gonna be studying this. And
It's gonna suck.
It's 'cause-
Actually, this was like running is very. How long did you make this? So 10 years later. So this is the tension building up.
oh, really neat. We need a book about the growth of tomorrow. and like fish traps.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes is all for speaker as well. Just a couple of facts about the Bend Hawthorne. It doesn't need to get too intense. Okay, go ahead.
Speaker, is that the facts? Yeah. He obviously,
He was American.
he obviously like, is opinionated on these different themes.
He's a writer.
You always found that too.
I bet.
Okay, he was born. Actually,
July 4th. Oh, wow. Huh. Oh, yeah. His work often.
Yeah.
We already said that.
Whoa, he changed his last name.
Did he? What was it originally? Oh.
Oh, wait.
He took away the E, right?
Hawthorne.
Yeah.
W.
Oh, he added the W, that's right.
That's pretty crazy change right there. Oh, this is to hide his family's dark past.
His works often focused on
His
religion.
great-great-grandfather, John Hawthorne, was a beginning judge of the Salem witch trials.
Wait, say that again?
His great grandpa was.
Great,
a judge of the
great.
state- Great
Get it
grandpa was a
right,
judge
right.
of the
Doing the
state-
10 things you may not know about. He was educated, that has to do with it, because back then.
Oh, so that does. No, never mind. The narrative letter.
He was born on the 4th of July.
I know,
That's
yeah.
significant.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right, okay, last one we're gonna do is tone. For tone, you're gonna take your subject. So let's say your subject is, I don't know, gender equality or something like that. And then you're going to say, what is the tone towards this subject? So I'm gonna say he is, oh, tone words are hard. What would you say? Is he critical of equality? Like he doesn't want men and women
Yeah.
to be?
No.
Yeah.
Like a little bit, right? That's where I'm like, he's not fully
all
pro, I
women
don't think,
only
he's
care
not
about
fully
the
against.
work. This is the only art
Ambivalent.
they can do.
Ambivalent means you're of two minds.
Am I just crazy?
Anyway, you're gonna write down the subject and then you're gonna do a dash and you're gonna say, okay, what is his attitude towards that particular subject in the novel? Like, what's that novel's attitude towards that subject? Okay, I'm just gonna give you a minute for that to brainstorm.
Yeah. Sin. Or like open-minded, like not like. Yeah. Dr.
Yeah.
So back to the Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Do you think that we would ever put troops back there if it got bad enough? Or do you think since they've taken it over, like there's no
I mean, I kind of feel like, so Korea was a very similar situation. I mean, way different, but also where we like left and we're just like, good luck, guys, you know? And we've never been back, no matter how bad it's gotten. So I kind of feel like we wouldn't. Yeah. 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 But I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about the Middle East, quite honestly. All right. Let's put those aside for a second. We gotta go take pictures. So we're gonna go down there. It's in the tech atrium. If you don't know where that is, just follow everybody else. There's 4 lines. And so kind of just disperse among the different lines. And then if you're noticing that one's going way slow, feel free to change lines. It should take us about 10, 15 minutes. So you can leave your stuff up here. I'll lock the door. Did anyone already take pictures though? Yeah, then I'll lock the door. Okay. Let's head out.
I don't agree. I'll check.
There's always me.
Just slide over. I look like I don't want it. Driver's license photos are always the worst. Why? Why? There's a group. All of soul. Is it like in like a group? Okay, so it's not like. What is this? Yeah, like, how much money did you pay? Let's get it. Yeah, you do. You have to get.
I don't think, no. Oh, we're early. Oh, somehow.
Pretty sure
Let me
this
see
is
yours.
like a
No.
donate or
No, let me see it, let me see it.
It's so bad.
I should do
Let
it.
me see it. I just wanna see it. Yours is so good. Let me just see it. I don't like that. You're kidding me, it's so cute. Why are you?
It's better than last year.
Should I try my last year?
I can show you my last year.
My last year's one was pretty. Okay, my driver's photo though is so bad.
Oh, mine is like, look at the difference on Oh, okay, actually now this one is pretty good.
There's this one,
Oh, that one's good too.
and then look at my driver's license.
Mine's so bad.
Something probably was like, man, look
I
at
don't know
that.
why, but my hair was a mess. I didn't know how to smile, and I didn't.
I like half small.
Okay, I'm going to just listen to my words now. Top secrets. Cautionary? No, hot stick, making biting corrosive comments. When it wasn't good. What?
Oh.
Tracy, watch me.
I was like, huh? Like what? What?
Repeat that one.
Yeah. See.
That's the day after home.
I am struggling.
You know what I need it? No sé nada.
Okay, that actually, that was like really weird.
I don't even know what we were doing.
We were supposed to be talking about them, but like.
I was like, it's real. Like what? Tengo medio de que what? Like tengo medio de que eso y eso y eso. And I was like, what? And then it was like, trabaja más. Just like what?
We gave like one word answers, we like work.
Yeah,
Practice.
work more.
Do good.
Do
Don't
good.
sleep.
What were you guys talking about?
She had us write down what our fears for like this
The
school
school
Oh,
year.
year,
yeah.
some people are like,
And we had to talk about it, but our group was basically just like, no, work.
we're trabajo, man.
Yeah, trabajo.
Trabaja más, or whatever. And you're just like, there's like,
Do good.
todos somos amigos. Like,
See.
it's the funniest stuff. It was so random and you were just, and I think a lot of people forgot Spanish too. We were all like, you're really. We have a lot of native speakers. I think we have, I don't think it's a lot, but I think. it's a lot.
serial.
But Gracie's sister.
I don't know. Like what?
She's just a funny name.
I've seen her solos last year.
Remember what Senora was like? But Gracie and
Oh, yeah.
Christensen, they're sisters, you know.
You were like.
We're all sisters.
Oh, yeah, she's talking about something funny. It does. Old like house. It's totally yeah.
At least I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
I'm changing.
Art.
I don't.
Yes.
You look good though. But my hair was wait, let me see.
Huh?
No.
As opposed to.
Who? No, I look like a grump on
Second
steroids.
secretary, do you like?
I'm sure it can't be that bad. No, it is.
I just really wanted to know.
I don't know.
Shake.
I don't even wanna talk
Sometimes
about
feelings are different.
Sorry, y'all. Thank y'all.
Very different.
Very-
Oh,
And
from
from
picture.
Exactly.
Different people, yes.
Yeah, Marty, just like before and after.
Gosh, do long draft.
I like the style of these ones a lot.
Austin, how's your picture? Can I see it? I like
I'm
one.
doing
The
research.
walk of dread.
Two? No.
They didn't even show me mine to let me.
Really? I literally said, let me see it.
I should have done that. I should have.
It's not like anyone's.
I know they did.
In the yearbook.
Yeah, but like.
Everyone's gonna see it. Not you. And every time until like a football game or something, you show it.
And
And
then
then
the
the
person
people that are gonna judge
the
me.
people
No,
there
they
are
judge you,
gonna
they
barely
think-
glance at your card and be like, okay, go. They.
At that point, you can use like your favorite.
I'm sure it's not that bad. I was like,
My favorite trophy at 89.
dude, mine is so ratchet. I'm like,
We'll see.
I don't match mine.
Yeah.
Because I had a big cut and like big.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, my clothes fits from middle.
Wait, so why don't you like yours? I'm sure it's like.
It's bad.
My hair.
World's Board cynical and tired. I'm looking at different tone words because I
I'm
don't
not
know.
Mine's gonna go into.
Hey.
I look like- I knew when she said tilt your head, I was gonna look like a freak.
They always want to get like.
I have a video.
Austin, you're so weird. How do you have?
No,
those
yours
questions?
was. Alright.
Wait, what did you say? Say what you just said.
I have a picture.
Hey, pull it right.
Oh, I think it's an actual-
You're
so obsessed.
So I have a video.
That's better. I think I had a photo like this one.
I did not read anything I write. So.
Whoa, that's a much.
I like notes in my phone. I always mean to write my notes. I do, but then I don't do it.
I was a big mom at heart.
Oh, do you want to write? Do you like writing Spanish? Do you want to write?
No,
I'm so excited. Like I study. Like, oh yeah, that's. I'm in yoga. I'm in yoga. Addie.
So I
Same.
No, I'm just- I should go with that.
No, I'm like, I have to say what you're saying. I think I lost my card. I don't know, I remember that, but I get the idea. Yeah. But then when I hear it, I'm like,
Wait, no, wait.
oh, well.
I am a god.
I'll take it.
I do.
Someone's called child protective services.
Let me see it. What about you? We just took a picture for Spanish 3, so.
You've already burned it.
Yeah. You want to take a look?
Oh, I know where it is.
Yeah. I have a single dollar.
No, I'm gonna die. Let's go.
Come on, Austin.
Literally right after this. I am struggling with day 3.
What's happening?
We were playing Hangman, but we did Exigence.
Did
And
you
it took me a really long
I know.
time to get it. I was like, what?
That's
I have 3 E's.
adorable.
I thought it was supposed to be asparagus, but then I was having issues. And then you did the hot small asparagus. Yeah, so then I was
We
like,
just
you
have
have
to
to
go,
go.
right?
Swimming indoor conditioning.
Let's
2 hours.
make our way back to our seats. I think we're mostly back, and if we're not, it's because you're straggling a little, so.
I said retakes. That's disgusting.
Oh, no.
No, it's so ugly. Oh my
But I'm sorry,
All right, can we talk a little bit about the occasion and what you guys discovered or what you were thinking about with the occasion? So when he wrote this, it's 1850. What's going on in 1850 that you thought might be relevant? Claire, right? This is gonna take me a while, sorry.
Yeah, close.
Kaylee.
We found out that he was an anti-abolitionist.
Anti-abolitionist, Hawthorne?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, I need to look into that. All right, but upcoming Civil War. Now I have to look at that because I had always thought, hang on. Yeah. That's what it was. Now I remember. He kind of started off and then eventually came around to the cause. Same with some other prominent thinkers from this era that we're going to talk about. So when he was writing Scarlet Letter, my guess would be, yeah, he hadn't really come around on that idea yet. So let's down here put or racist. Okay, cool. All right, what else should we know about this era? Yeah, Luke. Yes, okay, so we're back here with speaker. Oh, but the book was written in Salem as well. So let's put it here, and he's from Salem. Okay, yes, Addie.
During the time, there was like race issues with the government and the police force.
Yes, so there was a really big, important thing that happened in 1850 called the Big Compromise, or the Fugitive Slave Act. And it was basically this compromise because the South was like, look, we're going to succeed. We're secede. Sorry, not succeed. They didn't succeed. They're going to secede. They're going to leave the Union because they wanted to keep slavery. And the North said, we don't want war. What if we let your police force come into our states and track down slaves who had escaped freedom? And the South said, okay, fine, that sounds like a good compromise. So this Fugitive Slave Act was passed that basically a whole lot of people, thousands of people who had escaped to freedom, had held like jobs, held positions in government even, were now like fugitives and could be hunted down and taken back to the South. So it was a huge year for the Civil War because it was like, we're going to put off Civil War, but within 10 years, it's gonna fall. Anything else about that era that you want to say? Yeah, Lucy.
Wasn't that around like the Seneca Falls
Yes. Seneca Falls Convention, which was all about women's right to vote. So there's a lot of rebellion in the air. There's a lot of like social reform in the air, basically social reform around slavery and around women's rights.
His ancestors are Puritan.
Yes. Did you see who his ancestors were though? Did we talk about this last time about his great grandfather? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Audrey. Yes. Sorry, I'm getting it. So he was like a lead judge, and out of all of the judges that were involved in the Salem witch trials, all of them ended up expressing regret for their part in the Salem witch trials. They were like, yeah, what we did was wrong. Basically sentenced a lot of women and one man to death in their community for being witches. And Hawthorne's relative was the only judge who never said he was sorry. He went to his grave saying, yeah, burn witches, like he was not, I don't know if he was sorry, but he never publicly admitted it. So we kind of like really held fast to that. All right. With that kind of like background knowledge, then we can start to approach the text. So let's say you're getting some like text that's a piece of persuasion, right? You're going to go through the soapstone stuff to try and figure out as much context as you can. If you were to look this stuff up before you started reading, it could potentially help you understand the text itself. And now you know. So with your books, actually, I'm going to give you these. You're going to look at the very first sentence now of the book. Okay, these go right in your binders. They're all of the texts that we're going to be using for the first unit in this class. You won't be reading all of these. We'll be reading
Wow. Do we write our names on this?
Yes, it's yours. You can write all over it. Draw whatever pictures you want. And you're just going to open to the very first page of this. I copied an excerpt from the private letter for you. Was it this class when we were talking about whether or not you liked the book and someone brought up how there's a whole chapter just on a door? That's come up in a couple different classes.
Hester embroidered the letter.
Uh-huh.
Yes, how did you not get the?
Yeah. She did?
Yeah,
That
I didn't
blows
know
my
that.
mind. I never got that.
That was the beginning of the movie.
I actually missed the part.
You look good. No, I don't think it's.
Yeah.
I just don't like stuff.
All right, a huge part of figuring out how someone is persuading us and what they are trying to persuade us of is through close reading. So at the end of class here, we're going to practice a little bit of close reading. We are just going to look at the very first sentence of the prison door. So a throng of bearded men, and this is in those packets I just gave you. It's the very first page. A throng of bearded men in sad-colored garments and gray steeple-crowned hats, intermixed with women, some wearing hoods and others bareheaded, was assembled in front of a wooden edifice, the door of which was heavily timbered with oak and studded with iron spikes. So the whole little first paragraph is one sentence. One of the reasons that Hawthorne can be difficult to read. The sentences are very long. That first sentence is full of really interesting adjectives, really interesting nouns too, actually, and even maybe an interesting verb. So what I want you to do is, with the same people you were working with before, with that partner, I want you to find 3 words in that first sentence that you find interesting or important to the book, You're going to write all over your packet and you're going to write why those 3 words are interesting to the book. Does that make sense? Okay, do it with a partner. You're finding the 3 words that you find most interesting.
It's like, oh, there were. So I feel like.
Yeah.
And bareheaded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think sad color like sets the tone. Because they wouldn't say like sad color if it was like Christmas. Like, it was, yeah. Oh, okay. What does this word mean?
And.
So wait. Oh, it says there. Oh. Oh. What do we think this, like, why did we?
Just because of this.
Yeah, it's like an important place.
It's very important.
Significant building.
They kind of view it as a soldier state.
Just because it's.
So you're writing to decide what makes those 3 words that you chose significant.
Oh, we just.
Yeah, just anywhere that there's room.
It kind of,
I said, it's like some
because it's such a.
Yeah, like an answer.
Shows that's a little bit dramatic, I guess. Or something.
No, Caitlin. I don't know why. So every once in a while, it's a name I can't get. All right, next part. It's okay if you're not here with me yet, but here's the next part. If you are, you're going to choose one of those words where you and your partner, you feel like you guys had the most insightful comments about that one word, and you are going to look it up. So I looked up the word gray. I just Googled gray definition, and I thought I knew what the meaning of gray was. Someone says, what's the definition of gray? Not quite black, not quite white, right? Somewhere in between. And that is the first definition. It says of a color intermediate between black and white, as of ashes or lead. That's super interesting that ashes and lead are part of the definition. Next definition, weather, cloudy and dull. Of a person having gray hair, which means that it's related to old people collectively. Of a face, pale as though tired, or having an illness. Without interest of character, dull or nondescript. There's like 20 more definitions of gray. So you're going to look up, even though if the word you're like, well, I know what it means, you're still going to look up the definition and you're going to see what you can pull out of that definition. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing it up here. Work with your partner but you can glance up in a bit and see what I've done up here.
Okay. We'll start with. Sad color. Yeah, it just like, it sounds like it's full, it's packed, it's dense.
What is significance?
So it's just like a big event, like isn't it like?
This is just like one or two people. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the entire town. Okay.
Well said.
There's one that says, adult.
I've read tons together. It's more like it's not just a city. Everyone's just standing around you. And
Oh, it says, sad colors, it like carries the meaning of seriousness rather than sadness. So we can like say that this is a serious event.
Dark and muted. Ooh. I do feelings of sad.
Okay, so you're seeing up here how I'm doing this? I'm trying to just brainstorm as much as I can about a single word based on the definition. So up here, I've got like that it's an intermediate color. That's the word that the dictionary used. And I'm like, okay, so that means it's not quite one thing, it's not quite another. So to be gray, to wear gray, it's kind of like you are in between things. And then I felt like I was very smart. That's why I've got my exclamation point, because I thought of the fact that this little passage uses threshold twice, this first chapter. And I was like, oh, gray, if it's in between space, is kind of like a threshold between white and black. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make anything of that, but I wrote it down. I've got dull, which means boring. I've got nondescript, which means it kind of like blends in. They're not interested in standing out. They're not vibrant at all. And now I've gone on this whole spiel where I'm kind of just like roasting old people. So I'm going to keep doing that up here. And you guys keep working on your word that you chose as much as you can possibly say about it.
It says like.
Yeah, I'm like complex system.
Oh, that's just
In
so
the
cool.
old English, it was rain and fire. It was a verb to express violently or force one's way.
Okay, so it's like
It's like a song or like oppressed.
Yeah.
There's a need.
Oh, apparently.
it's intimidating.
And I was getting like,
I think it's cool. I looked up what's the most impressive color.
Seems like
Which says that.
everyone is actually.
I don't know what's wrong.
That's impressive.
That
makes sense.
It's not.
that was like that.
It's like,
And it's like,
I got brown with these. Brown's just fun.
I think it's so funny when people ask me my favorite color to say brown. I don't, it just cracks me up. It's like, what's your favorite color? Brown. I'm like, it's not, no.
Okay.
But it's just such a funny thing to say, because it is, it's like depressing and kind of like
You're just like
nauseating.
15-minute bell.
What?
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
the-
yeah, right? It's, is it even a color?
It's like a 15-minute bell.
But it's like,
and it's
why do you
the
need to
worst. Because it goes like.
All right, we've got 2 minutes. So tell me, what was one word that you and your partner were looking at that we can make some observations about? Yeah, Keely. Edifice. Awesome word. Okay, a word that maybe when you read it the first time you didn't know what it meant, so it was a good idea to look it up. Maybe not, but what does edifice mean?
Okay, there was three definitions. The first was a large imposing building.
Mhm.
The second was a complex system of beliefs.
Yeah.
And then the last was an abstract structure.
Okay, cool. Tell me why that is standing out to you here.
Well, you got to like the how is a large building? I thought how that was like cast a visible shadow, both like literally and figuratively on the community. This like leaves its mark. We also talk about how it's an abstract, it should also be an abstract structure, so maybe this represents in a way how their like society works.
Yes.
And then it also represents the system of belief, kind of. So it
Yeah.
kind of like groups all that together.
Yes. Awesome. And what is that structure again that is imposing this system of beliefs in the society? It's a prison. Yeah. It's not a church. It's not, what they say they have organized their society around. It is the thing that is standing in opposition to the church. It is where they house the sinners. So we're gonna get back to that. And we are done for the day. We don't have homework for next time. The next time I see you is Friday. We never have homework due Friday, but I think we also don't have homework due the next time. We don't really start up until next week. So you are good and you can go.
It's so good, you know,
Oh yeah. They said it does not spread on surfaces, so I'm feeling okay about that.